I'm not actually doing anything with this doll head besides occupying my hands. I'm just going to put a little roller set in while I'm talking because I find it much easier to talk and style hair at the same time. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about a few hair myths, things that I have to address when I am doing hair, when I'm trying to explain to people why their hair is or is not doing what they want. So I'm just kind of covering a few of the myths that I get most often and why they are wrong or misguided in some cases, not necessarily purely wrong. But one of the first things that anybody ever says is, well, I've heard that if you cut your hair, it will grow faster. And the honest answer to that is it won't. If you use a little bit of logic, you would see how would you cut something and have it grow faster. To me, it's the equivalent of, say, I'm going to mow my lawn so it will grow faster. It's not that anything is growing faster. It's not that anything is growing in any different rate. It's that either you'll notice it, say you cut your hair extremely short, or you give yourself bangs. Now you have hair that you notice is growing. So perhaps that's one of the reasons people think that it's growing faster. The other part is that your hair with a good trim regimen can actually grow longer. Not faster, but longer. If you are taking care to remove split ends and dryness, the hair will be able to actually continue to grow past where previously it might have potentially broken off. For some people, that's a real issue. So getting consistent trims, usually if you're staying on a good schedule, no more than a half an inch every couple months, just to keep things fresh so that your hair can grow as long as it possibly can. It won't grow any faster. The only way you can change how your hair grows is your health. If you are in poor health, you definitely will not have hair that grows very fast. If you are in good health and well nourished, your hair could grow slightly faster. But at the same time, nothing I do externally to your hair or that you do to your hair will affect its growth rate. The only thing that affects it is internal, given that the hair is a reflection of your health, but it is not particularly healthy, and I'll get back to that in a minute. So as far as it goes, you're not going to find that you grow your hair any faster more than you'll grow it longer, and it is more noticeable if you've cut it short. From there, we have the next one, which is one of my favorites for using logic to work it out, which is I've heard that if you pull out a gray hair, two more will grow in their place. And that to me is silly. What you're going to get instead of two more gray hairs is you're going to end up with noticing your gray hairs. You cannot grow two hairs out of one follicle. There's no way that it will multiply in that fashion. You're not going to find that all of a sudden you're magically growing extra hairs out of one follicle. If it were that easy, anybody who was experiencing a little bit of hair loss could just stimulate a follicle and grow 2 hairs. But what usually happens with gray hair is that your hair will start changing thanks to your genetic predisposition. And so you end up having your hair that is already going to be changing to unpigmented or gray strands. Generally speaking, they're actually clear, but most people associate them with gray. And as, let's say, you are somebody who is, you see one hair and you pull it out. Well, now that you know that there was a gray hair in your temple area, well, now you're going to start seeing more of the incoming gray hairs as your temple area continues to produce unpigmented hairs versus pigmented hairs. It's kind of the nature of the beast. You're not growing new extra hairs. You're just now noticing your newfound silver, tinsel, sparkle, white, unpigmented hairs that up until that moment had never been noticed. But once you notice it, you'll continue to notice it. It's much like if you were to buy a car, all of a sudden you start seeing that particular model of car everywhere. And it's just because now you're paying attention to it. So in the case of the gray hairs, it's not so much that anything was made to come in because you pulled one out, but that you are now noticing. And it does take some time for the new hair to grow in and start being long enough that you notice it. So it does take a little bit, but once it's there, it's more noticeable. So it's not that you pulled one out, so now you're getting 2 or more in that one follicle. It's that you pulled one out and now you're noticing all of the other new ones that are coming in. Another hair myth that I like to dispel is the idea of having healthy hair. A person cannot have healthy hair. Our hair, once it leaves the scalp, is dead. There is no health to be had. There's no blood flow, there's no nerves, and thank goodness, because I would have to have a whole other license to do hair. But there's nothing that would indicate any measure of health. If you damage your hair, you don't get the opportunity to wait for your body to heal it. There's no chance that, like a cut on your finger, you're going to have a small scar or something of that nature. Instead, you just have damaged hair. So it cannot, by definition, be healthy. However, what your hair looks like can be an indicator of your overall health. The shinier the hair, which would indicate that you have an abundance of the natural oils and cholesterol to create shine and smoothness, is one indication that you are in good health. The thickness of your hair is another indicator of good health. It has nothing to do with the hair itself having any form of health at all. It has to do with the fact that your hair is an indicator, because as it's growing at the root, your health affects what is growing. Your health affects how much it's growing, how smooth it stays, how shiny it looks. So the best way to indicate that you are healthy is by having your hair reflect a healthful look. And that's just the thing that happens, is that part of my job is to imitate what someone who is healthy, what their hair would look like, so that you can have what a lot of people call healthy hair. The same thing goes, oh, well, I wanted to put some, is there a shampoo or conditioner that can make my hair healthy? No. But there are things, much like if you treat your hair like fabric, there are things that can help make the fabric softer. There are things that can help create smoothness or repair certain areas of damage that's been done, but the hair is dead, and once damaged, it doesn't come back. It doesn't get to be healthy again. You can't start doing some sort of conditioning regimen and expect your hair to be back to its virgin state, because it doesn't work that way. Your hair is dead, and once damaged, it's damaged forever, and you just have to disguise or do your best to mitigate the amount of damage you are doing to your hair. From there, another myth that I'm trying to dispel is the difference between split ends and baby hairs. Split ends are caused by distress on the ends of the hair where it has dried out and started to split or break or knot. And then there's baby hairs. And the baby hairs are the hairs that, through the growth cycle of sprouting from the scalp, growing as long as possible, and then resting, eventually they're pushed out. And the new hair comes in, and it's just a little short, tiny baby hair. And a tiny baby hair will stand up, your hair look like a fuzzball, or might get you thinking that perhaps your hair is actually damaged from tip all the way to the scalp. And that isn't something that the baby hairs are. Baby hairs are identified by their incredibly smooth, pointed ends, because it is coming fresh from the scalp. So you end up having the little tiny baby guys that, due to the fact that they are very short, due to the fact that they are very lightweight, and that their ends are just such a little, it just goes off to nothing, they stand up. Humidity causes it to stick out, and people often mistake baby hairs for broken or damaged hair and want to cut all of their split ends. And that's not recommended, because you end up going from having a fine pointed end to your little tiny baby hair, and now you've cut it off blunt. So it's going to be even more noticeable. The big difference, if you need to identify for yourself, is look at the ends of the hair. If they, use this as kind of a, if they taper off into a point, just going off to nothing, it's a baby hair. If it's a really blunt and rough end, if it's got knots or a whiteness to it where it is broken, then that is a split end. Most split ends stay at the end of the hair. They don't come up to the scalp unless you have been severely negligent in your hair care and the longer hairs have literally broken off all the way to the scalp. But in the average citizen's hair, it's not breaking off all the way to the scalp. Much like if you look at the ends of the hair and somebody says, "Oh my gosh, they're fuzzy all the way from the end all the way up to the nape of my neck. I'm gonna have to cut it all off." No. Each of the hairs probably only needs about a half an inch taken off. You don't need to cut it all off. Just follow the layers and see where you're getting. Most split ends and roughness happen in the last inch of the hair, not all the way through. And that last inch is per individual hair. It's not for the whole hair cut, the whole hairstyle. It's each individual hair. Because the keratin is a strong fiber. It doesn't fall apart that. And it's pretty amazing. But yeah, the baby hairs, if you every day you look and you see fuzz emanating from your scalp, like say your crown area, you've got little baby fuzzy wuzzy hairs all over the place. Well, those are baby hairs. You want to use humidity sealants and smoothing oils to calm them down. Give them a little weight and tell them to just lay down rather than panicking that your hair is broken off all the way to your scalp, or even worse, attempting to cut off your quote unquote split ends. And that's just a thing that personally bothers me. It's not anything that is really widely known. People don't often talk about their baby hairs. Everybody talks about split ends and split end menders and things like that, which also don't really work aside from, in a manner of speaking, gluing your hair together. Once you split it, it's split. There's no returning from that. So the only way to fix your split ends is either cut them or glue them together. And that's what most split end menders do, is it's basically gluing your hair together using keratin as the basis for a type of glue to glue the ends together. The best remedy for split ends is trimming. But you don't have to go through and do a trim all the way up and down your hair shaft, because then you're making the problem worse. It will just continue to look fuzzy, and now it'll have blunt ends. And that's definitely something that nobody wants to deal with. Next myth is my color washed out. Oh, you don't have to worry about my hair. I colored it once a year ago, but it all washed out. Hair color doesn't wash out. There is definitely a time that you may not see the color anymore. It has faded. The pigment molecules that were created with the application of the hair color are no longer present in the hair, but your hair is not back to natural. Your hair is not back to its virgin state. Your hair has been chemically damaged and it's still there. Unless your hair is shorter than the amount of length in the time period. So if you said, "Oh, I did it a year ago," and your hair is only 6 inches long, yeah, it's grown out and it's gone. But if you say, "Oh, well, I used a washout kind of color and there's nothing left," still done something to weaken the hair. So if I come in and want to color over that, I'm going to have to watch that your hair isn't so chemically compromised that what I'm doing is now going to add another layer of compromise and potentially give you a chemical haircut. It's not fun. Your hair color cannot wash out. The only kind that might be considered a washout is something that doesn't require developer. If it requires any kind of two steps where it says, here's the color, here's the developer, it will not, let's put it this way, the damage will not wash out or repair itself. So even if you can't see the color anymore, or you've just grown so accustomed to it that you just assume that it is gone, it's not. And it will affect your color service. It will affect how your hair behaves. My hair feels really dry on the ends, and I don't understand. Well, when was the last time you did anything chemically? Oh, about a year ago, but it all washed out. Well, if your hair is really dry on the ends, and it just happens that that dryness starts 6 inches away from the scalp, there's a pretty good chance that that's the chemical damage that you did by applying a washout color. Anything semi-permanent, demi-permanent, and at the same point, permanent color is only permanent to the degree that you take care of it. Environmental factors will alter what your hair looks like. There are many, many, many oxidizers in daily life. Going outside in the sun will continue to oxidize your hair and wear down that color molecule. So unless you are taking every step to protect against heat, protect against the sun, protect against water in the shower, you won't have the same color that you started with, no matter, no matter what your goal really is. Permanent color is only as permanent as your care of it. And even with the best care, there's going to be a fade factor because environmentally, our hair gets attacked every day. And then if you add in heat damage, sun damage, chemical damage by, say, swimming, it's not going to be permanent. It's going to fade off. So washout colors don't exist. Your hair, or, oh, well, it all grew out. That's another one that people will say, oh, well, don't worry about it because the hair color all grew out and I'm fine. But their hair is down to their rear end and they said it was 6 months ago. Only the 3 inches of hair from their scalp will actually be grown out. Everything else is still there and there's still chemical damage. Even in the nicest of, color services, still chemical traces. Even if you only did it once and it was supposed to be a semi-permanent and wash out in 12 shampoos or whatever, it's still there. Another thing, one of the other myths is blonde fading. And in that I mean, well, I had my hair done blonde, but it faded, so I need to have even more blonde. Well, generally speaking, in the process of creating blonde hair, you're using a lightener that involves developer and other chemicals that come into the inside of the hair shaft and literally start breaking apart melanin molecules. What's left is the pheomelanin, which is your yellow tones in your hair. Well, with that being left, your hair is as light as it's going to be. Blonde can't fade, especially if it's attained in that manner. So what's ended up happening is either environmental things, like the hair is getting quote unquote dingy looking from minerals in the water, or things like a product that you use and repeatedly build up in the hair. That is something that can make your blonde fade. Also, in a lot of cases, when people say they're blonde faded, what they're really saying is, my blonde isn't as bright as when I first left the salon. So therefore, it faded. And what that can be is that perhaps if you had a gloss put on for tone, that itself has faded off, and so your hair goes from being perhaps more in the platinum icy white to more of a soft yellow looking color because of what pigment was left in the hair. Or that you do need to do some kind of treatment, chelating treatment or other such things, that is basically a deep cleanser to remove the impurities that are preventing you from actually seeing the blonde that was created in the first place. So it's not blonde hair can't fade. Once the pigment has been removed, it doesn't come back. It doesn't all of a sudden turn into less blonde than what you started with. And these are just a few of the little hair myths or misconceptions that people have about their hair. They don't always understand how things work, or have just heard similar things throughout the course of their life. So in some cases, it's just a matter of, oh, well, everybody I've ever dealt with in my life has always said things like, oh, well, my color washed out, or my blonde faded, or the gray hairs going from, oh, you pull one out, now you're going to get two. Well, if you use a logical mind and you really think about it, just ask yourself, how? So when it comes to things like, oh, well, you cut your hair and it grows faster. How? Oh, I had pulled out one gray hair, now I have two in its place. How? Or I colored my hair, but it all washed out. Well, how? And if you can't answer sufficiently for yourself how that would work, then that tells you generally it's a myth. It's not something that people can actually do. It's something that somebody has said at one point. Perhaps the cut your hair to grow faster was a way to encourage people to trim their ends, kind of a psychological move, like, oh, don't worry, if you cut it, it'll grow faster. You'll be fine. It'll grow right back. Okay, great. Or when people say parts of their hair grow faster. Oh, the back never grows, but the front grows so fast. Why? How would that happen? Well, it's because your bangs are right in your face. A half an inch from your eyebrow is now in your eyes. While in the back, anything past about your shoulder area, nape of the neck, it grows a half an inch, you don't notice it. So it's not really that anything's growing any faster in any one area of your head, so you notice it first. Or there is to a certain degree. There is a little bit of extra speed on the nape of the neck, but not enough to say, oh, that's growing so much faster. So these are just a few of the little guys that people think about hair. People think about what, you know, why things happen, or think why they should do something, shouldn't do something. And it's all just has to do with the fact that people aren't well informed. So I'm hoping that this lays out a few of those things that you can be more informed about. So that way you don't end up having these misconceptions. And if there's anything else that somebody wants me to discuss, talk about, other misconceptions, things that they wondered about hair, please, by all means, let me know. And I plan on doing another live stream regarding hair care, specifically styling, shampooing, conditioning, those kinds of things. How often you need to wash, how often you don't need to wash. And so that's on my agenda for another live stream like this. I will probably continue to style or set doll heads while I'm talking, because I find that easier to talk about hair while I'm doing hair. So I'm hoping that this answered a few questions, and I look forward to doing this again in the very near future. So push the button that says end. Well, it's so tricky here. End live video. All right, and then it'll ask me, yep, yes, I'd like to end it now, please. Thank you.